Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with a little chat about a very interesting box that I had almost forgotten was available, and I had to wait to get here to the overflow room to make sure I hadn't been hallucinating. You know, one of the things I said when we talked about Seiji Ozawa's 10 best recordings was that he evolved into a very persuasive exponent of the German standard repertoire. But because most of those recordings were made with the Saito Kinen Orchestra in Japan, and they were recorded there by Philips/Decca, but they didn't get much Western release, and nobody paid much attention to them, and that was sort of a shame, because it's a piece of his artistic personality that we were missing, and it's an interesting artistic personality. That's what I had hoped to demonstrate in my discussions about his best recordings. But I knew I had this. I knew it, but I didn't know where I'd put it. You know, I mean, however organized we try to be, right? Once you get past your first 70 or 80,000 CDs, it's just very, very hard to keep track of them. I mean, what can I tell you? I do my best, but anyway, I came back here to the overflow room, and sure enough, here it was, smiling at me. It's Seiji Ozawa German Masterworks with the Saito Kinen Orchestra, Bach, Beethoven, Brahms, and Bruckner. And I just wanted to tell you about it. It's still available. You just look it up under Ozawa German Masterworks or Ozawa Bach or something like that. It'll show up. And it's not expensive. And it has 15 CDs. And what do you get? Well, you get the Bach B minor Mass and St. Matthew Passion, and they're excellent performances with wonderful singers. Let me tell you, wait a minute. Let's look and see who they are. One of you mentioned, actually, that you were very impressed with his B minor Mass. I believe you said that it was one of the few performances you heard by a modern conductor that actually had something to say in the music, and that wasn't just some sort of rote performance. And I agree with that sentiment wholeheartedly. It's a magnificent, heartfelt performance that has an enormous amount of character and great choral singing and amazing soloists. Here they are. Wait a minute. Wait a momentito. Here we go. CDs 1 and 2. Yeah, what's 1 and 2? Mass and B minor. Yeah, here we go. 1 and 2. Barbara Bonney, Angelika Kirschlager, John Mark Ainsley, and Alistair Miles. What could be bad? It's a wonderful lineup. And, you know, Ozawa really, I think, has evolved into a musician of some depth. I mean, a kind of depth that, you know, he didn't have a chance to display the same way when he was doing, like, you know, all the French stuff. Not that French music doesn't have depth, but it's a different kind. The thing about French music is that it's usually so colorful and so well written that the depth part doesn't really need to manifest itself in order for you not to be bored. Whereas the German Masterworks, well, if you don't have the depth, you're going to sleep. And then the depth, that's the word, right? Yeah, that's what's going to happen. They have a tendency to turn dull. They're not going to keep you going over the less inspired bits on sheer craft alone for the most part. And so you need to have that element. Well, these are wonderful. And in the St. Wait a minute, the St. Matthew Passion, which is a piece I would sooner slit my wrist than listen to on most occasions, but I know that I'm in the minority there. Most of you actually are sort of, sadomasochistic. Well, never mind. Yes, okay. John Mark Ainsley is the evangelist. Thomas Quasthoff is Jesus. Christine Oehlse is soprano 1. Natalie Stutzman and Stanford Olson, and Michael Vall, bass. And yes, wonderful people. Wonderful singing, wonderful everything. And beautiful, and you read by now, of course, I mean, it may be a little bit ironic, but it could have been that when Ozawa was much younger, I am sure he loved the music just as well, but the idea of a Japanese person doing that music here in the West was, I think, looked upon somewhat askance, horrifyingly, because who cares what nationality you are? I mean, the music is self-evidently expressive, and great musicians will self-evidently express. whatever the music expresses. So, it makes no difference where you're from. But I really believe that he suffered from a certain prejudice and being taken for granted as a conductor of a certain type. But when he went back to Japan, first of all, we had Suzuki and the Japan Bach Collegium doing amazing Bach, all recorded on bis, of course, on period instruments. And now here's Ozawa in his late period starting to take on the same stuff. And I think part of that, the reason he would be taken seriously is because of that history now, of us losing some of our horrible, stupid, natural, nationalistic prejudices and cultural assumptions and whatnot. Anyway, it's really, really good. So after the Bach, we have to get through the rest of this fairly quickly because I don't want to belabor the point. We have a Beethoven Cycle, the whole Beethoven Cycle, all the Beethoven symphonies, and they're quite well done. I mean, this is not a Beethoven Cycle that's going to, get you, jumping up and down like crazy. This is a standard, very well played, non-period instrumenti performance. But by the same token, it's very lively. It's wonderfully lively. I mean, for example, the opening poco sostenuto and the first movement of the seventh is really poco sostenuto. And the finale is incredibly exciting. The Pastoral Symphony is gorgeous, perfectly paced. The second movement, just about under 12 minutes, exactly where it should be. The woodwinds really singing beautifully. I mean, the Saito Kinen Orchestra has wonderful, wonderful players. They're very, very fine performances by any standard. I mean, are they going to be your favorite or my favorite? I don't know. But we have to acknowledge the excellence, that Ozawa and the orchestra achieve. They take the music very seriously, but not in a bad way. I mean, seriously meaning they respect it enough to do it well, to do it justice, not to take anything for granted. And it's wonderful. And really, I'm very surprised that the ninth is actually this good. It's a wonderful performance. But then again, Ozawa did a very fine early performance with the New Philharmonia, I think it was, on Philips. I mean, one of his earliest recordings. And he did an excellent job. One of the nicest things about this performance is that the Adagio is actually somewhat Adagio. It's 14 minutes. And it's a little bit slower than the Scherzo. It takes a little bit more time. So the proportions seem to make a little bit more sense. The choral singing is first rate. The sonics are wonderful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful performance. And then we also get the Brahms symphonies. And Ozawa was also always a good Brahms conductor. Even back in the day, remember he did an early Brahms first. It's on TG, and it's really, really good. He didn't get any credit for being a good Brahms conductor, and so he didn't do much Brahms. He didn't make an effort to record it all, but with Saito Kinen, he did the complete cycle, and it's a very fine Brahms cycle. He's known that music all his life and respected it enormously. If you actually read the that Conversations with Ozawa book, that book which I read, it's actually a very interesting book. He talks about being, spoon-fed Brahms by his teachers at a very, very early date. And so it was always music that he revered and loved very, very much. And this is a lovely, lovely Brahms cycle, so that's nice to know. He doesn't screw up the third, like everyone else tends to. It never bogs down. It's very, very sensitive. Some people might want, more, Sturm und Drang or excitement than Ozawa pulls out of it. It's more elegant, perhaps, than meaty, but it's echt Brahms. It's the real deal, and it's very nicely done. And then the box, that is, concludes with a Bruckner seventh. And Ozawa is a terrific Bruckner conductor. Please, God, don't do a cycle. But I've heard him do a bunch of them. I mean, he did one of the best Bruckner seconds I've ever heard. I mean, who does a good Bruckner second? I mean, who's not a, committed diehard Bruckner cult member type thing. He just did I heard him do a great Bruckner second. I heard him do a great Bruckner fifth. It was televised. I saw it on television. I was sitting there with my father. We were going to watch boxing. And as we were skimming around, we saw, oh, wait, I said to my father, stop. It's Bruckner. And my father said, oh, God, it's Bruckner. And I said, yeah, but, this is really interesting. Let's just watch it. So we watched it. And we watched the whole thing. And it was really, really good. He's a very, very fine Bruckner conductor. And the seventh is just lovely. Absolutely lovely. It's wonderful to hear him, do another one, in isolation, not in a big clump. I don't like Bruckner clumps. I like isolated Bruckner islands, an island of Bruckner, not a clump of Bruckner. And it's a beautiful performance. So if you're interested in Ozawa, that's what this is for. I'm not going to say that everybody should have this. But if you're interested in his artistic personality and getting a more complete picture of what his achievement is, then this German Masterworks box is really nice to have. It actually came from Italy. See, it's got the that little Italy, silver thingy that Italian Universal releases have attached to them. But I really think that, we still need to have a big Ozawa box. Maybe after he's no longer with us, God forbid, that will happen. But I think that especially with the Saito Kinen stuff, all of it should be put together and issued, because it's a tremendous legacy. It's every bit as important and in some respects maybe even superior to the Boston stuff. And because I think that he had more freedom to do the things that he felt closest to. Whereas, the Boston stuff, a lot of it, I think, was contractual obligation and recordings. So it would really be nice. Not that he didn't do it well, but you know what I mean. I think there's an extra amount of commitment and conviction in some of these Saito Kinen recordings, which we would all benefit from hearing. So keep on listening, friends. Thank you so much for joining me. Take care.